This is the boarding module of the Inculc8 system. It's designed to work with a variety of boarding schools, from those which are predominantly full boarding to those which only have a small number of flexi boarding spaces. It also provides support for late stays and day boarding. In the school setup, you can define which of the houses have boarding rooms, and then within the boarding module, you can set up the boarding rooms and define their capacities. For the first part of the setup, you can define the boarding duties for staff, for example, taking supervised study, patrolling the games fields, monitoring the students in the gym, and so on. Most of these duties will have some sort of student registration. You may want to know who has been to dinner, for example. For registrations where the students can come and go, for example, in the gym or the art room, we register the student arriving and then deregister them when they leave. We call this type of registration in-out registration, and more on that later. There are other cases where staff are simply on duty in an area or a house with no specific student registrations. Once the duties have been defined, you can set up the term and schedule the duties on either a weekly or a two-weekly basis. And this defines the evenings that the duties will operate. For example, the art room might be staffed on a Monday and a Tuesday evening, or swimming might be available on a Wednesday evening. You can then set up which days the duties will operate for a given term, or half term, or even for the entire year. Often boarding students arrive on the day before term starts to get settled in, and in some cases, accommodation and supervision can be provided for students over an exeat or half term. This is also where you allocate staff to the various duties. And once allocated, the duties will appear in the calendar for the member of staff. If we look on the student side, you can set up the types of boarding available. For example, you might offer full boarding or a late stay option, or for Sunday evenings, you might offer a basic bed and breakfast service, but no dinner. You can also specify whether or not a room is required for a particular type of boarding. The exact facilities available and the type of boarding on any given evening can also be defined. From here, you now set up the boarding periods, and these are usually terms, but you could set them up for the whole year, and define the sign-up periods for parents. You can automatically create the default entries from the types of boarding that we've just defined. However, you can use the day mapping to further refine the boarding offering if some options are not available on specific days. We have specifically kept the staffing allocation periods separate to the student allocation periods to allow staffing to be changed on a different rota to the students' sign-up periods. So, for example, it might not be seen as fair if some staff have to stand on the AstroTurf in the winter term watching students, while others only have to watch them playing table tennis inside the boarding house. Parents receive a notification when the sign-up period starts, and they can then see what's available and select the options that they want to sign up their children for on each day. You can also send out an electronic form of this for parents, which shows the same thing. It's worth looking at the finance features of the module at this point. The school can create a text description of how the boarding pricing works for a given boarding period, and that's written in plain English. Our engineers will convert that into a finance script, and this will allow parents to see the exact cost of boarding as they sign up for the various options. Once all parental requests have been submitted, the system will create a spreadsheet with all the prepayment charges. The boarding charges can be quite elaborate. You could, for example, charge a lower fee for boarding over consecutive nights, or you could set different rates for, say, a Monday, and obviously you can charge different amounts for the different types of boarding available. By storing the scripts with the boarding periods, a new pricing structure can be trialed without affecting previous periods. You can also enable ad hoc boarding. This allows parents to sign their children up for boarding during the term. If they require accommodation, then of course the ad hoc boarding is subject to availability. For ad hoc boarding, the charges are made in arrears, and the finance script will calculate the charges and produce a second spreadsheet at the end of the boarding period, subject to the rules that have been defined. The charges for the ad hoc boarding for each type of boarding can be defined next to the boarding types and will be visible to parents when they book the ad hoc nights. Once parents have signed up to boarding, there is a process of room allocation for these prepaid boarders. During the room allocation process, the system will check that rooms are not overloaded, that students in different year groups are not put in the same room, that students are allocated to their preferred boarding house, and so on. You can manually do the allocation, or you can use the automatic room allocation function, or even a combination of the two. At the end of the process, you can create the boarding calendar entries, and these are then visible in the students' calendars. We'll have a look at the day-to-day operations functions now, and we call this the boarding manager. Here you can see who is boarding tonight and the ad hoc requests from any parents for boarding, and you can also, if you have permission, accept or decline the request. And staff with the relevant permissions can allocate students to rooms, and again the system will flag any errors. Rooms can also be taken out of service if necessary, for example, if the heating stopped working or they need a deep clean. You can also see when parents have made cancellations. The notice period in days for when a cancellation is actually chargeable can be defined, and chargeable cancellations are clearly identified for both staff and parents. A monthly overview of boarding requests showing the totals for each type of boarding is also visible on the boarding calendar page. Staff can use the boarding manager to register pupils at the various registration points, for example, at dinner. For the in-out registrations, the system starts a timer when the student leaves the activity. The timer is then cancelled when they sign in to a new location. And you can define two key time values relating to the timer. At the first time value, for example, after 5 minutes, the student will receive a notification reminding them that they need to register at a new location, and that could just be back at house. At the second time value, for example, after 10 minutes, duty staff who don't have other specific assignments will be notified about the potentially missing student. For evening sessions such as supervised study, the boarding manager can be used to assign students to one of several locations. The staff on supervised study duty at each location can then use the software to register the students, and it's easy to see who hasn't arrived. These registration mechanisms comprehensively cover the school's duty of care for boarding students. The system knows where all students are at any given time, and it keeps a full record of all the activities and locations that the student has been to. Catering staff can also access a page called Tonight's Boarders to see how many students they are expecting for dinner. They can see their dietary requirements and any allergy details. And in a similar manner to all the other modules in Inculc8, staff can be assigned to cover for absent colleagues, and the covering member of staff will automatically get a notification, and then the duty will be added to their calendar. If staff take students out for the evening, for example, to a restaurant or to the cinema, the staff member can create charges, scan receipts, and then assign the charges to the relevant students. And those charges will be added to the arrears finance spreadsheet when it's created for the period. If you need any more information, please visit our website.